So we're going to dig right in. We have our norms. We know what our norms are, so move along. Let's uphold them today. We have our schedule. There's hard copies outside the door. For those of you that this is your first data day, welcome. And Maggie, are you taking?
I am.
Oh,
hey, Kev.
I have our schedule up here too. So we're going to start whole school, and then we're going to break into teams. We have a nice lunch. It'll be provided right out here. We're going to have one My Story. We're going to come back and then dig into math the rest of the afternoon. And we're going to close out in here at 3:50. So that is what our day is going to look like. It's going to be just a really nice, jam-packed, but very rigorous and productive day. And I think back to 6 years ago when I first came to AF and just how nice it was to just have a full day, to just sit down and look at data and plan. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It means we're going to have lots to do, but it's going to be a really great day. So without further ado, we're going to jump into a do now. And if you could please take one and pass it. Thank you. Take one and pass it. And what this do now is it is a transcript from a nonfiction reading class, the class of Wesleyan, third grade reading class. And we're going to take about 10 minutes looking at this and discussing it just to open and frame our day. So on the front page is Bloom's taxonomy. And then on the rest of that page, on the next page, is a transcript of a series of questions and student responses that the teacher and students are providing. And we're going to take about 4 minutes together, 4 minutes individually, to read the transcript. And as you're reading, label each question according to Bloom's taxonomy. So is this a remembering level question? Is this an evaluation level question? So analyzing the questions and labeling the level of Bloom's that each question is at. And then evaluating the student response. So where did student answers fall short, and what would have made specific responses stronger? So take about 3 to 4 minutes to do that independently, then we're going to come back over. Any questions?
Student response fall short. Huh? This. Is that for Josh? Yes. Oops.
Now we're going to turn share and just chat with a partner. This is
Share to share.
questions.
Yeah.
What were the levels of the questions on Bloom's taxonomy? How could the rigor and sequence of questions have been improved? Where did student responses fall short? What would have improved these responses? How many of these questions match the level of rigor of what our scholars are expected to do independently on an IA in the upper grades, or on the beyond and about the text sections of an FMP assessment?
We're going to have a few minutes to chat with a partner now.
I mean, I think straight from the get-go, this needs to be like, what is the genre of nonfiction? How do you know? Why is this nonfiction? Because nonfiction has text features. Great. Let's review what those text features are. There needs to be some of that. Like when we spoke about this last Wednesday, these two questions, like what does ancient mean? Something that's really old. This one's interesting too. I think it was Maren that pointed this out. That it means that turtles travel. It doesn't necessarily. It's not just turtle. It means to travel a distance. Right. I mean, and the teacher's just giving the answer. Oh yes, this is exactly what you said. No, all I said was turtles travel.
It's not like
Yeah, I think.
oops.
So either check out something that you said or that your smart partner said. So first one, level of questions on Bloom's. How could the rigor and sequence have been improved? Christine. I had a really good conversation with them up front. You two mind sharing?
Yeah, so we said that a lot of the questions, most of them were in remembering in the beginning of the conversation, and they were repetitive. So like a lot of, what does this word mean? Why are text features important? And those questions were asked multiple times with like the same answer being given.
Tamara had talked a little bit about how the questions seemed very scattered and not cohesively leading up to one like very rigorous final text-based question. So there was an opportunity to like scaffold what the student needed to know and then ask them the very challenging, but they were just kind of all over the place.
Yeah. It's kind of like scattershot, and then at the end it like jumped up on Bloom's like, good luck. Angela, last one for that.
They're also not very text-based. Like, what does ancient mean? You could know that from background knowledge. Also, the question, why do you think an author would include a map, could potentially be a strong question if it were developed a little more. Like, you could just come up with an answer, to help us understand where things are. But it's like, to improve that, I would say, like, what information did we learn from the map? And why is that important for understanding?
Thanks. What about student? One more, Brad?
Oh yeah, just one thing that we spoke about was just that, like the answers to the questions were very simple, and then the teacher was just like, yes, and blah, 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 you know, like giving them all the information that they could have come up with on their own had the questions been more rigorous.
Thank you. So you're jumping to the next one too, which is really focusing on student responses, and it sounds like you said the teacher was giving a lot, right? Could somebody add something to what you noticed about student responses, or what would have improved them?
Yeah, so just piggybacking on what Brian said, it's just like the questions didn't require them to add anything else. Like it was very superficial, like question, just a very remembering question. Where if you ask a higher level question, then it would require just scholars to add more.
And how many of these questions match the level of rigor that we're expecting of our scholars? Steph? Okay.
I put up one.
I thought you were like,
I have an idea. Just one, but it's like an analyzing question, and it's near the end. When analyzing, like the middle of Bloom should be near the middle of the conversation, so that by the end they're near it.
okay. So we're gonna have we've never really done this before. We have like some overarching driving questions for our day school-wide. And this is obviously gonna look different at every grade. But our questions today are, how rigorous are the questions I'm asking in our class? And just as importantly, do I have scaffolded questions planned if I don't get extra spots? So it's not just like, oh, we're at the precipice, you know, but we don't actually have a plan to then build up from there if scholars really struggle. And am I only accepting answers that include evidence, whether that's mathematical, conceptual evidence, work that students are showing, or obviously, as somebody was saying, that these questions, the student responses didn't really require much evidence, and students weren't providing evidence from the text. So if it's a text-based lesson, making sure that evidence must come from the text. The last piece we're going to do before we jump into our data is a little vision setting. So we're driving hard towards these outcomes, being these questions, really rigorous questions and really strong student responses. What would we be engaging with our colleagues about today? What types of things would we be doing? What would we be hearing ourselves and our smart colleagues saying? And then what mindsets do we have to embody as a team today to drive towards these outcomes? So take another 2 minutes, chat with someone nearby, and then we're going to come back.
What's really important challenging each other to come up with much more rigorous questioning. You know, and saying like, that's a really good question. How can we make that even better? Or at what point in the lesson should this question come? Like, where does it fit in with? Right. You know, because I think like all line of questioning is important. Like we want our scholars to be able to, you know, recall information, but like how are we going to scaffold that? And like I think that's what we should. Right. And how can we lead up to rigorous, culminating time?
So what are we going to be engaging about with our colleagues today? What are we doing and saying? You can kind of merge these questions. Tisha.
I think like a teacher practice or like a mentorship. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but like when you engage with your colleagues today, like try to find those strategies that they use that worked best for their kids to get them to learn that concept, see if it works for your class, tweak it if it doesn't.
The dialogue, discussion with colleagues. And this is so often we're kind of siloed across our school, teaching our crew in front of us for how many hours a day. And this is a day for us to be having conversations with colleagues, right? Actionable conversations, but conversations. What else?
Jamie and I talked about how to make everything that we do here and live in our work and make it like more sustainable. A lot of times we have like these great ideas on data day and then it's hard to live out because there's so many things to do on top of what we've already been doing.
So almost like a less is more approach, and like really zooming in on specific things that we want to transfer across the next coming weeks rather than like trying to do 100 things today. Is that roughly accurate? Okay.
Gina and Carrie back here talked about how a lot of this lives in planning and lives in like preparation. And then also Gina brought this great point of so if we're planning all these great questions for literature, for example, in second through fourth, then it would also be great if we're making some kind of reporting sheet where with the exemplar responses where we're like, yep, they said this and this, they missed this, just like we do in data reading. Like that kind of planning needs to live everywhere. Yeah. And then I was like, yeah, and it could be in math too. And like pushing kids to be precise with their vocabulary and their language.
Yeah. That really resonates with me around this planning piece. I think in the past, and this probably resonates with some people, data day is like a race to make 1,000 worksheets, right? And like, no, seriously, and like, and then it's like at the end of the day, and you've only made like, I don't know, 340 instead of 1,000. You're all like, oh, you know, whatever. But, as opposed to really thinking of it, like living in our plans, and Marco and Swetha, I heard you guys talking about too, like just talking about text and making sure, like going into text. Like if we're teaching reading and we want our questions to be amazing text-dependent questions, like living in the text today as well, right? And discussing those texts and getting to the strongest understandings that scholars should have walking away from those texts. And then the mindsets we have to embody as a team. What mindsets do we have to embody for our children today?
Well, Christine and I were talking about, like, it's important to know that even in the lower grades, but all the way up to fourth grade, that it is possible for kids to deeply engage in the rich type of questions that we're going to be driving towards the analysis, the evaluation, the application, and that we just have to push ourselves in order to get them there through that scaffolding questioning and you know, having text-dependent questions and targeted instruction, but that even as no matter how young they may be, they can have those deep type of conversations as well.
It is possible.
Just to be like blatantly honest, for all of us, like if we're upping the rigor from what it already is, it's going to be frustrating. Like lessons get frustrating when you feel like they're not getting it or you're trying to pull and this and that, but like we have to be comfortable with that. And we have to let the kids know that they should be comfortable too, that we struggle sometimes. You know, it takes a little while to get through stuff or to learn stuff, but they'll get better once they do that.
Would you mind sharing the quote you have in your board, Steph?
The greater the struggle, the greater the victory.
Yeah. So embodying that kind of mindset with their children as well. And Carly, were you going to say something? Did I see your hand? No. Okay, great. So for the last about 13 minutes before we dive into team time, we are going to be spending time looking at some of our reading data, and we've really tried to streamline this process, so we're providing a quick snapshot of the data, and then we're going to share a quick bright spot, and last, for each grade, we're going to share a snapshot of an example of what rigor looks like in this specific grade, so that we're building our like rigor lens, our rigor mindset across K4. And our lovely grade level leaders are going to be leading a lot of stuff this afternoon. This morning it's going to be more me talking, and then Ruth.
All right, welcome to kindergarten. This is fantastic. They're diving into some nonfiction texts and deeply engaged and absorbed by it, which is lovely. Here's where we stand. Some good, some not so good. So this is what we look like. We have currently 13 students in the advanced band, 40 students who are currently on grade level, 10 that are almost there, but freaking 28 not there yet. So we have some work cut out, but here is a bright spot. A lot of our kids definitely know our letter sounds. We have a strong phonics program, and even Miss Chelsea Welsi right here is running with the pack. That's right. So as far as like the rigor that we're working at, as far as text goes, in reading comp,
Here is where the wild things are. The question is, was the journey Max took where the wild things are real or imaginary? How do you know? So this is a level of rigor our kids are going to have to unpack as we read and as we develop our thinking skills. Pretty rigorous, right? Staff thinking is rigorous. For a 4 and 5-year-old have to unpack. So this is part of our work, and a part of our work will also be for those 28 students that are still developing the awareness of rhyme. Cool. First grade! Look at our lovely grade. So, here we go. This is an incomplete data set, however, it looks smoking hot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a significant portion in the green, a significant portion in the advanced, and some in the red and yellow. This is Mr. Jimmy. And the reason why Jimmy makes it on here is because he's a new friend in our school. And the first day he had to open books, he bawled his eyeballs out. Bawled them all. I can't do it! I can't do it! But guess what? Susan and Emily have worked really hard so that reading is now an enjoyable task, most of the time. And he'll get there, you know? And so here's a level of rigor that we're also looking at here. This is a seemingly very simple book. Come out and play, little mouse. However, the rigor increases. What is the relationship like between Mouse and his big brother? And it's not apparent in the text. They have to make the leap that the big brother is protective. They also have to make the leap that the big brother wore a dog suit and followed him out with the cat and rescued Mouse from the cat. Some of our very literal thinkers don't think that the dog and the mouse are one and the same. And what does that mean if your big brother comes and follows you out and picks up the cat? What is that big word? So that's the rigor snapshot, one of them, because we have some, KLM readers in first grade currently. We're still pushing for more.
Great. Let's snap it up for K1, by the way. It's really cool to see the level of questions that are happening with our youngest ones in our school. This is Tiffany in science class. She was so excited about whatever they were doing this day. Loved it. Little Talia back here too. That's great. Okay. Anyone?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Give me the song. I was thinking that, what is it, Rain the Castle? Right, anyone? Okay, so the Red Wedding, if you're not a Game of Thrones fan, there's lots of blood and red during this time. Just which is analogous to our upper grades right now. So what I did was, instead of showing the pie chart, we made bands of scholars that were 85% or above on our ELA, 70 to 84%, 50 to 69%, and 49% and below. And just to give you context, for our 4th grade, we had one scholar get a 4 last year, and he scored an 81% on I-1 this year. So he was advanced, and he scored an 81%, so he would not have been up here. So just this context, right? It's like helpful to frame the information and really help you interpret it. I know certainly helped me interpret it. So this is where we are. And last year, 39% of our 3rd graders were proficient on the Common Core State test. We also had almost 50% at level 2s, approaching proficiency. Okay. Bright spots. Our kids did pretty well with character feelings and character traits. There were several questions on the IA on pretty rigorous texts, and our scholars did a nice job analyzing how characters were feeling or their personality traits. So snap it up for that. Successful with that. And a rigor snapshot. I didn't know how to capture the rigor snapshots from 3rd and 4th grade because so much of it is based on the rigor of the text. And independent of us spending another 5 minutes reading the text that the scholars did, I wasn't quite sure how to convey it by including a question. So I included an elephant because there was a passage called Vernon's Questions in 3rd grade where students had to do a high degree of inferential thinking It was never explicitly stated that there was this elephant this boy was seeing outside. He keeps asking his brother these questions that are annoying. What's gray? What's this? What's that? And scholars had to put the pieces together in this text and make some pretty big inferential jumps on this text. So that is our rare snapshot for third grade. Back to second. Oh.
Dun, dun, dun. Here are our friends reading a lot during this is independent work time. So they're working really hard, answering some text-dependent questions. So this is where we stand. This is also incomplete, but ratios looking pretty good. So we need to keep all of these and move all of these. So bright spots. Our kids in second. Yes?
So wait, I actually have a question, so I literally do not know. Wait, is this F&P scores or
F&P.
is this an I? Okay.
This is F&P.
Yeah.
So good thing, second graders are learning how to answer text-dependent questions with a claim and their evidence. And this dude right here, Mr. Dwayne, is pointing to his evidence. So they're practicing and they're learning to make their claims and their evidence even stronger. It's a bright spot. Do we have work to do? Absolutely. Let's look at the level of rigor. This is Monique Bain answering a question off of the IA. Why did Kelly's grandpa call her the lucky fisherman? Be sure to provide details from the story in your response. The kids had to actually put together why grandpa called her this and have to actually point out text evidence. And so Monique was one. Pardon? Monique was one out of how many? How many kids actually answered this question? Was she the only one?
No, this was not, so this question was scored out of 4 points. This was not a 4-point answer, but this was like one of the best ones we got. Because most kids just used one detail and not two. It says details. But in order to answer it, you had to get these two.
So this is the strongest we got. We have some work to do, but they're getting there. And so we need to push for that.
Cool. And fourth grade. Miranda, back when she was, this is not kindergarten, I think this is first grade. And then Leon, wearing a football helmet. Okay, so jumping in, here's our high level snapshot. We got some in the 70 to 84 band. Right? We have 31 and 50 to 69 band, and then 34 scholars at 49% and below. And again, our lone scholar who scored advanced on the Common Core State test last year received an 81% this year. So just putting it, helping frame sort of these results. Bright spot. This is a fourth grade response. The prompt was, imagine Joshua had a choice at the end of the first day, that's very important by the way, to stay in third grade or move to fourth grade. Which do you think he would choose and why? Be sure to support your answer with details from the story. My best Nate Washington voice. I think he would stay in third grade because he's starting to enjoy it. I know this because when Mrs. Goodwin said, I'm sorry to hear you're moving tomorrow, Joshua said, maybe my plans will change. This shows that he thinks he might change his mind on saying he'll move. Also, Mrs. Goodwin said that Joshua was the smartest boy she'd ever met. This shows Mrs. Goodwin is starting to like having Joshua in her class. This is why Joshua might want to stay in third grade. And the reason I put this prompt up here is because scholars that got, like fundamentally, the correct answer here is he's going to choose to stay in third grade. And scholars that were able to get to that conclusion were able to track how the character was changing over the course of the text and had a deep understanding of the relationship between the student and the teacher, and that she really wanted him there and was trying to build up his confidence so that he felt good about himself because he was repeating the grade. And scholars that had that level of depth of understanding of the text were where Nate was going with this, as opposed to like scholars that were really relying on their their own personal experience rather than a deep understanding of the text. Those scholars were saying, well, I think he would go to fourth grade because he misses his friends and blah, 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 blah. But like Nate really lived in the text and what was the text telling me and what the inferences I can make from the text. Okay? So, the rigor snapshot is, I put this picture here because that text, for example, required a gradual evolution or building of student understanding over the course of a multi-page text. And scholars that were kind of living here in the more literal understanding weren't able to make some of the cognitive jumps that Nate did. So our rigor for today is getting scholars to see the totality of the text and really the key messages in that text as opposed to sort of focusing on specific parts. Okay? We are a minute ahead of schedule. We have our, Steph, do you mind getting Alex again? We're going to break into our rooms in 30 seconds. And Kate, do you want to say something before we break?
Yes, the schedule might appear to be a little bit confusing, so I wanted to clarify a few things. K-2 will be all together in Indiana.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Katie said that to me for changes on the schedule this weekend. And
Yeah, so if you're in an ICT room, just make changes. K-2 will be in Indiana, so K-2, except for from 11:07 to 12:05, you will be in Florida, K-4 ICT with me and the intervention team just for that hour today for reading. So meet me in Florida at 11:07, not a minute late, just sort of knock to 10. And then again at 3 p.m., the same thing, from 3 to 3:50 will be the same thing.
can we snap it up for Katie too? She made pumpkin bread toast.
Oh yeah, and then eat the pumpkin bread.
Pumpkin bread.
Eat all.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're this whole morning we're just digging in, and we're gonna come back. Lunch will be up here at like 12:05 or something like that. So, great.